Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Carol Badeau. I am privileged to serve Westside as minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today we're talking about the autumn festivals, holidays, or celebrations that come at the very end of October. These are all holidays that have to do with making peace with death. So as we begin, we light a chalice to represent the light of values that we share as a community, the light of the human spirit, and the commitment that we have to one another and to a brighter world. The words for our chalice lighting this morning, November 1st, 2020, come from Robert T. Weston. Autumn, we know, is life en route to death. The asters are but harbingers of frost, the trees flaunting their colors at the sky, in other times will follow where the leaves have fallen. And so shall we. Yet other lives will come, so may we know, accept, embrace the mystery of life that we hold a while, nor mourn that it outgrows each separate self, but still rejoice that we have our day. Lift high your colors to the sky and give each in our time fresh glory to the earth. In the season of autumn, we are aware that things are dying. This week, there are many holidays that are celebrated to mark that awareness that we have about the natural world. We notice in the season of autumn that there is this feeling of both decline and also deepening. There's a richness that comes with autumn. And around the end of October and beginning of November, we mark a number of holidays that are both ancient and traditional and made new in many ways by different cultures. So some of those are more familiar than others to us. Most of us are familiar with Halloween, but it's really the newest of these traditions. So in the pagan and earth-centered traditions, the holiday celebrated at the end of October is known as Samhain. Now you see that pronounced or spelled as Samhain, Samhain. And sometimes people have pronounced doing Samhain. It's a way of saying you're going to get in trouble or there's craziness going on. But it's pronounced Samhain. And it's a holiday taken from the ancient Celtic traditions. It marks the end of the year and the beginning of a new year. So in those traditions, it's actually New Year's right now. It's a time when death is honored as an essential part of life, when the cycle of birth and death, and in those traditions, rebirth, is recognized at its fullest. Samhain is considered a time when the veil between the world of people who are living on earth and the mystical realms where people who have passed, where the veil between those two realities is very thin. It's considered a time when we can reach towards those who have passed and make contact with them more easily. So in this tradition, people celebrate in many ways with bonfires outside, with special feasts to remember their ancestors, prayers and rituals to connect with those who have passed. Now, this is not unlike some other traditions which have grown, some of them directly out of that. In the Roman Catholic Church, the tradition was at the time that the Romans actually conquered the British Isles and these traditions, this tradition was adopted and adapted into All Souls and All Saints days. So in the Catholic tradition, we have the Feasts of All Souls and the Feasts of All Saints. And while a lot of the theology has changed, actually much of it has stayed the same between those traditions. Much of that original meaning is left intact. In the Catholic tradition, this is a time to honor all those who have departed, to pray for their souls, to pray for their ultimate arrival in heaven. Now, in some cultures in Mexico, not all of Mexico celebrates this, but in parts of Mexico and in parts of North America in the United States, where people of Mexican heritage live, this time is celebrated as a day called Dia de los Muertos. And Dia de los Muertos, it means Day of the Dead. It's, again, a celebration designed to honor those who have passed. In this tradition, families gather to tell stories and to celebrate the lives of their departed ancestors. In fact, in this tradition, much of the celebrating happens in actual cemeteries. In the home, people create altars called ofrendas, where they place little images which represent their beloved family members, often as skeletons. So if your beloved family member played a musical instrument, there'll be an image of a skeleton playing that instrument. And there are special foods, traditional foods that are created, and the flower that is traditional to this holiday is the marigold. And so families will actually create big picnics or feasts, and they will process, communities will process to cemeteries, and they will stay at the actual gravesite of their loved ones overnight, remembering and telling stories, sometimes grieving, sometimes celebrating, honoring the life of those who have passed. Now, in our contemporary culture, the modern celebration of Halloween is the much more familiar and common way that we mark this holiday and this time of year. It is still an essential exploration of our relationship with death. If you think about Halloween, how we sort of commercially celebrate it, it's all about exploring the scary side of life. It's all about toying with the ghoulish and the ghastly. It's about playing out our dreams and desires and fantasies in our costuming, but a lot of that costuming is about defying death or facing death. Now, in the oldest earth-based traditions, those scary costumes and also the candles in pumpkins, or in earlier times it was gourds, those candles and those costumes were actually meant to scare away evil spirits and to protect people. Now, though, we often use those as a way of sort of defying death and saying, we're not scared. Death doesn't scare me. I'm tougher than that. All you have to do is look at a few of the movies that are on your cable TV right now, and you'll see that defying death is a big topic, right? So in all of these traditions, we dance some sort of ritual dance with death itself. We explore perhaps deeply or more superficially, depending on the traditions we honor. We explore what it means to be humans who die, and to be humans who have lost others to death, others that we love. In many traditions, the naming and remembering of those who have passed is essential to this holiday, even more than the costumes and the candles and the rituals. So look around you for a moment. If you are somewhere where you can see what it's like outside, look out your window. And if you are not in a place where you can see that, think about it, remember it, close your eyes. Look at the trees. Imagine or look at the trees dropping the green of summer, fading into other colors, becoming either bright or bare as the leaves fall. Look at the trees that are bright with color, proclaiming one last vibrant statement about life. And look at those that are bare, proclaiming the emptiness and the letting go of death. Reflect on the darkening days. It's growing deeper and more persistent, that darkness now, as we move into the depths of winter. Consider the coldness of winter, which is approaching. These are all reminders to us that in the natural world of which we are a part, death is essential. That the seasons of dying and ending are essential to the seasons of rebirth and beginning, which will come in 6 months. Inside our own hearts, we have to acknowledge seasons of death. Perhaps we have to let go of those who are no longer with us. This is the most obvious and clear way, but it's not the only way. Just as the time of our loved ones who have passed has ended on this earth, there are other kinds of endings and deaths that we also feel in our hearts. Perhaps people have simply moved out of our lives. We may have to mourn the loss of dreams or expectations. Perhaps we mourn the loss of assumed good health. We may have lost a job or a way of doing a job. We may have losses that are associated with changed circumstances. We may be grieving something as beautiful as children growing into adulthood. We may be grieving a sense of identity that has changed, a sense of security that is no longer quite as solid as it once was. We may be losing a sense of understanding our world as our world changes and we see things differently or more clearly. Grieving is essential to growing. There's no new birth without the death of the old way. We can't simply move across this veil of this world and a different world. We don't just simply move across it easily. The veil of our physical life into some other possible life, whether that is metaphorical or material, that movement requires this intermediate stage of death. We have to move through the veil of change. There is a threshold place. We move through a threshold when we cross from old dreams into new ones. We move from past expectations into new creations. These are all thresholds that we cannot move through without some form of death. Death is a transition then. It is a time of shifting and changing and reconfiguring and realigning ourselves. When we honor the deaths that have already occurred in our physical lives, whether they are metaphorical or material, we give death a place of honor. We admit that this transitional state is important, regardless of what we believe about what happens after physical death. In the natural world, physical death gives way to new birth, and that is also true regardless of our theologies about what happens after we personally die. Because when we die, there is still new life, new generations, new experiences coming behind us. If we allow ourselves to honor this fully, then we allow ourselves to acknowledge it and admit that we must make peace with it. If we can choose to grapple with death consciously, then we can recognize that whether we admit it or not, we are already in relationship with death. Now, we may have different kinds of relationships with death. We may fear it. We may resist it. We may defy it. We may avoid it. We may use rationality to brush it aside and say it doesn't matter much to us or it's not relevant. We may use zealotry to proclaim victory over it. We may have a philosophical or peaceful relationship with it. There are all sorts of ways we can live in relationship with death, but we do, all of us, every day, live in relationship with it. Death is with us every day, whether we acknowledge it or not. So in this time of pandemic, when physical death is so very present in our minds and our hearts, in this time of great social upheaval, when change is around every corner, we must make peace with transitions. We must acknowledge our habitual ways of dealing with endings, change, and loss. We must acknowledge our patterns for coping with things leaving or going in directions that generate loss and pain. And all of the holidays of this season give us some wisdom to help us do that. Samhain, All Souls, Dia de los Muertos, even Halloween are offering us subtle tools for helping us become more conscious in our dance with death. We can name the losses that are with us. We can honor those who have died, either in recent months or in the distant past. We can honor, name, and feel our love for those persons or those experiences, and we can name the absence that we feel if they are not with us. We can acknowledge that death is a very real and very present part of life, that we have to face it directly and make choices that honor that seriously. We can use the examples of those who have gone before us to live our lives more fully, more vibrantly, and more gracefully. We can remember to celebrate the simplest things in life with joy and good humor. We can remember flowers and sweet treats and imaginations and humor. We can treasure our families and our communities. We can recommit ourselves to the values of honoring nature, providing comfort for those in distress, and building a just world so that when we are gone, we too will be remembered with honor and gratitude by those yet to come. And we can choose to walk with death consciously in our lives. We can make conscious choices about the way we dance with this eventual, inevitable, always companion. Too often, this companion frightens and threatens us and keeps just at the edge of our vision without being acknowledged. But we can call on wisdom and courage and strength and guidance from those who have already passed. We can call on them to help us create a future that honors the changing of generations, that honors the turning of the seasons, and that recognizes we are but here for a time, but that our time can matter. As we finish this weekend of Halloween and Samhain and All Souls and Dia de los Muertos, we have the ability to become conscious creators of our relationship with that inevitable part of life, which means that we will leave. I hope that this can be something that allows us not to shrink back, but instead to move forward with courage and commitment and conviction and the willingness to leave behind a legacy that those to come will find in beauty and honor and love. May it be so. You know, we have our chalice lit when we are together. The light of the chalice reminds us of many things. It reminds us of our values of community and our commitment to justice. One of the primary things it represents is the spark of life that lives in each of us and the spark of love that lives within us, within our communities. So just as those things, the life spark, the values, the commitment, the love, just as those things persist, even if we are not together or when I blow this chalice out, even when that happens, the glow of those things lives on in us. The same is true of the spark of an individual life. We give thanks for all the lives that have gone before ours, for the lives that those persons lived so that we might have life. We give thanks for the opportunities that are provided by the things that they did. And in turn, we give thanks for the opportunity we have to share our own light each day into this world which needs us. So shine your light brightly and bravely. Dance with death gracefully and consciously, and know that your light matters in this world. Just as the spirits of those who have passed linger with us, so too does the spirit of this community remain in our hearts when we are apart. Though we extinguish this chalice, the light of truth, the fire of commitment, and the warmth of community stay with us until we are together again. Go in peace.